an oily assistant was sitting thinking that the end of the world was coming if here was going to close down. And her comment was the one that really mattered, because she said, it's all right if there's a load of plants there, but if he's not there to explain them, it's no good at all. Since 1976, I think this place has been held together by a called epoxy or gelatin, or something of that nature, and I'm very proud to introduce Nigel Brown, the curator of the garden, for a maximum of 30 minutes. But, I've been put up against the wall earlier by the bossy one and the posh one, and told that if I don't get the taser to Nigel after 30 minutes, then I'm in trouble. So, on your feet, and let's have lots of different things. Nigel Brown, thank you.
Thank you, Julian. I'm going to get rid of this thing. I can't work with one of those, I'm afraid. Thank you, Julian, for that introduction. You started the clock. Thank you, Steve, very much for those generous words. I trust that you'll use those to the new Vice Principal as soon as you have a chance to meet up with them. A very, very warm welcome to everybody this afternoon. I haven't had a chance yet to say hello to everybody. The nearest I can compare this to is my own wedding. It has that feel about it. You feel there's lots of people that you know, some really well, and some more distant relatives that you don't know so well, but they've all come to celebrate something that's really one of the most important things in your life, i.e. your wife-to-be. And it's like that for me today with all of you here today. It really is. I can't compare it in any other way. It's really quite a significant time. It's lovely to be surrounded by people that I've known and worked with, or have learnt from, or have taught at all ages and all circumstances, whether it be in university, school, college, or as friends. And they're represented amongst you today, and it's been really nice to hear from those people that couldn't make it today, but are really there here in spirit. And it's been wonderful. You brought so many of your offspring. There they go, in the distance there. Look as if you're having more fun than your life. But thank you for bringing them, because they can really be the heart and soul of the place. And for sure, there's no better time at Treborth than when we've got school groups and children's groups. That really does bring the place alive, because this is a place that exists to teach, educate, inspire, and without it, it doesn't work. It's, yes, a collection of plants and animals, but it needs this sort of input to really come alive. And thankfully that has happened throughout the history of the gardens, but particularly in the last 10 or 15 years, and I really see that happening more and more. And as Steve said, one of the ways in which Treborth is going to survive, is to become really a public facility which becomes the heart and soul of this area and wider, further afield, and particularly for the younger age group. I didn't really know where to begin, and I haven't really thought about the speech, because I wanted it to reflect the now and be instantaneous. And that's how it's going to be, and it'll probably be a very feverish attempt and not very effective at all. But then when we think some people have done that and produced great works, like Keats producing that wonderful poem that starts off Hyperion, then maybe that's not such a bad thing. Sometimes we work best under pressure and when we haven't got a fixed plan in mind and we have lateral thoughts. And just talking to you and seeing you just is inspiring for me, because you remind me of things you did, things that really interested you, and remind me that maybe there were things that you did at Treborth that have since been really important to you. So that's a great encouragement, because once you've graduated, those of you that were under my control for part of that time, I may not see you again. I might get the occasional email, but it just is so lovely to hear about what you've been up to and how perhaps Treborth has helped. As Steve said, the history is written up in the newsletter, so I won't go into too much detail now, but For some of you that perhaps were not as involved with Treborth at an early stage, after all, in the first 10 or 15 years, very few students would have actually come to Treborth because it was still developing, then it perhaps worth mentioning a few things now. We're actually sitting on a really interesting and important site from a horticultural point of view, because 150 years ago there were great plans for this site. It was to become Britannia Park, brainchild of the Chester and Holyhead Railway Company and a remarkable landscape gardener, Sir Joseph Paxton. And had those plans come into fruition, we'd have been sitting in a pavilion, not a circus tent, although it's beautiful, but there would probably have been a fabulous wartime glass pavilion, because that's how the Victorians thought. And that would have been linked to a dedicated railway station to bring all the newcomers to the area. And around us there would have been pleasure grounds with landscape trees and borders leading down to the Straits. There would have been a beautiful bathing place for you down by the Straits. There would have been ferries across to the other side. And this amazing plan was 2 years in the planning, a few months in the making, but it failed. Money ran out. Where have we heard that story before? And the reasons for that are complicated, very interesting, but it didn't happen. Instead, Britannia Park became just a memory, and the grounds that were to become Britannia Park slipped into private ownership and became part of the Treborth estate, hence the name Treborth Botanic Garden. And instead a forest grew up and the land was managed for agriculture, and that's how it remained right up until 1960, when the university acquired the site. Just to correct Steve on a small point there, it was Professor Richards, Paul Richards of great rainforest fame, who actually conceived the idea of a botanic garden, though John Harper, who Steve mentioned, was responsible for really propelling the garden forward in an ecological sense and using it for research. But Paul Richards was one of those remarkable traditional botanists who I have great respect for and was lucky enough to be taught by, and who saw global diversity in all its beauty and glory and interest as the most important thing. He was an organismal biologist, using that term to describe whole plants and animals, the way they interact with them, between themselves and with the planet. And that was really important, because at the time Paul Richards was here, we were beginning to learn more about biodiversity and the need for conservation, and he was right at the forefront of that. And he saw it as one of his